Two moments defined the destiny of humanity: Eden and Sinai. Moses broke the first tablets to save the people. The sin of the golden calf led to the system of sacrifices in the temple, because idolatry transformed light into shadows. The truth of the first Torah was revealed to everyone, but in the current one, everything is encoded. Hoy entenderes como cambio el sacerdocio antes y después del Sinai.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you for being here once again on Mishnah TV. Today we will go deeper into the study of the Parashat Terumah, which, as you already know, is being studied this week worldwide, all at the same time, to synchronize faith and soul as one single body. And I invite you to reflect on this, which will be one of our main hypotheses in this study. There are moments in history that do not only change a people or a community, they change the very structure of reality itself. For example, anyone with knowledge of world history or geopolitics knows that the Second World War, for instance, changed the course of history, and the world was never the same again. It was a before and an after. In the spiritual world, which is the root of all material things, the same occurs. And one of those moments happened in front of a golden calf. Yes, a calf, a statue, a collective error of the people of Israel. But what almost no one has told you is this: that instant was not simply a sin. It was a cosmic fracture, a change of Torah, a change of basic concepts, a change from a light that did not cause death to a light that did cause death. Today you will learn why the sin of the golden calf changed everything. But for that, you must stay for the entire class in order to fully develop this history and these concepts according to traditional sources, that is, the Torah itself in Hebrew, and classical sources such as the Zohar, the Talmud, and the Midrashim, and even sources from the Pauline epistles which, surprisingly for some, corroborate this reading of traditional Judaism. Now, imagine for a moment the original scene. The people of Israel have just heard the divine voice at Sinai. The first tablets are delivered to Moses, written, the text says, with the finger of God himself. Exodus chapter 31:18. They were not merely stones. They were a direct, transparent, luminous revelation. The first Torah, the original one. The hypothesis we will explore today is profound, even uncomfortable. The first Torah was not intended to be a dark text, full of layers and secrets. It was meant to be a fully revealed Torah, clear, prophetic, accessible to an entire people living in a state of elevated consciousness. It was a Torah that even a child could understand without difficulty. But the golden calf interrupts that design. Moses descends, sees the chaos, and breaks the tablets. That gesture was not an emotional outburst. It was a historical act that changed the spiritual level of the world. The Torah descended with him. It contracted. It became encoded. It became concealed. The second Torah, the one we have today, is still divine, of course, but it is no longer the same original transparency. Now one must search, dig, interpret, decipher. The light is still there, but hidden. Because, as you will learn today, sin, especially grave sins such as the peshaim, which from Hebrew is often translated as abominations, has dramatic consequences not only in your life, but in the world around you. And understanding this is key to understanding repentance, teshuvah, and the redemption of the Mashiach. And I will tell you something. Not only did the Torah change, which as I already told you went from being simple and revealed to becoming complex and hidden, but also, before the sin, the priesthood belonged to the firstborn. It was a natural, familial, universal structure. After the calf, sacred service was restricted to the tribe of Levi, which did not participate in the idolatry. The priesthood became specialized, divided, hierarchical, and this began to create fractures within the nation because it divided it, segmented it, and the problems this generated are written in the Bible itself and were the reasons for multiple catastrophes in Israel. Because sins, fundamentally grave sins, have grave consequences, and something emerged that was not in the original plan, the complete system of sacrifices according to the law of Moses, Holocaust offerings, atonement, sin offerings, not as an ideal, but as a consequence, as a repair. Just as the sin of Adam and Eve in Eden altered the destiny of all humanity, so too the golden calf redefined the spiritual history of the world. It divided humanity between Israel and the nations. It divided Israel itself between Kohanim, Levites, and Israelites. It divided the world between Israel, or Jews, and Gentiles. It fragmented what was intended to be a transparent unity. But here is the question that will pursue us throughout this entire class. If this was not the original plan, then what was? And even more, is it possible to restore it? According to Kabbalah, that restoration has a name. It is called Mashiach. If you stay until the end, today you will learn 3 fundamental things. First, what the priesthood was like before the sin of the golden calf. Not as we imagine it, but as it was destined to be. Second, what it became after the calf, and why the sacrificial system was not the original dream, but the response to a fall. And third, perhaps the most important, how to reveal the Torah today now that it is concealed. Because perhaps the Torah did not become smaller. Perhaps it became deeper. And the question is no longer what happened 3,000 years ago. The question is, at what level are you reading your own life? Stay, because what happened before a golden calf continues to happen within us. And understanding it changes everything. This is Abel Flores speaking, grateful that you are here with us. I invite you to leave your comments and questions, and I will personally respond to them. I also invite you to visit us on our website, lemishnah.com. Now, we have to start with the original meaning. This is our textual basis for our study. If I told you that the word priest in the Torah doesn't mean what you think, what would you think? Because it all depends on one word. 3 letters, Cohen. And in biblical Hebrew, nothing is decorative. Every term reveals essence, function, and destiny. Hebrew doesn't describe reality. It constructs it. The central word is Cohen. It is translated as priest. Its plural is Kohanim. But here's where it gets fascinating. Cohen didn't originate as an honorific title. It's not an ecclesiastical rank. It's a verb. And almost no one tells you this because they want you to see it as a priestly caste, as something racial or ethnic, and it's not. They lie to you. The translations lie to you, and they deceive you to manipulate you into their doctrines. The root appears in the active form, lokehen, to serve as a priest, to officiate, to minister. In Exodus 28, verse 1 we read, "And his sons shall serve as priests." It is action, movement, service in progress. It is a verb that became an identity. Great lexicographers like Gesenius and Brown Driver Briggs define the root as to officiate in a position of authorized service before a higher authority. That is, it is not about power. It is about authorization. But Kabbalah goes deeper. Let's analyze the letters. Kaf, numerical value 20. It symbolizes the vessel, the kli, the capacity to contain light. It is not the light itself. It is the space prepared to receive it. Pei, value 5. It represents revelation, manifestation, divine breath. In the Talmud, Menachat 29b, it is taught that with Hay this world was created. Hay is the Shekinah revealing itself. Nun, final. Value 50. Transcendence. Elevation after the fall. Eternal continuity. Spiritual transformation. Now combine them. The Kohen is the human vessel who receives divine revelation and channels it into the physical world. He does not create the light. He does not invent it. He transmits it. That is why the Kohen blesses. Because he is a conduit. He is an interface. He is an ontological bridge between the infinite and the finite. The Torah itself defines him in Malachi 2 verse 7. For the lips of the priest shall keep knowledge, and they shall seek Torah from his mouth. Channel of blessing, guardian of knowledge, intermediary between God and the people. And when we move to the plural, Kohanim, something changes. The suffix indicates the masculine plural, yes, but conceptually it signifies a network, not an isolated channel, but a structured system of spiritual transmission. And the priesthood as a state is Kehuna. Observe the pattern. Melech, king. Maluja, royalty. Kohen, Kehuna. The final Hay transforms the function into an institutional system. It is not just a profession. It is an organized ontological structure. And here is a fact that many are unaware of. The first Kohen mentioned in the Bible is not a Levite. It is Melchizedek, priest of the Most High God, in Genesis 14 verse 18. The archetype of the Cohen predates the Levitical priesthood. It is universal. It is before Sinai. Because the Torah existed and was known by many people before Sinai. What happened at Sinai was the revelation of that Torah to a nation, Israel, a unique event up to that point. But before Sinai, there was Torah in the biblical figures, and today we will study that. Then comes the crucial distinction. Levi is not synonymous with Cohen. All Kohanim are Levites, like Moses, who was a Levite. But not all Levites are Kohanim. The Kohanim are direct descendants of Aaron, Moses' brother. They represent the highest level of channeling. The Levite assists, prepares, and sustains the system. But this division occurred precisely because of the golden calf at Sinai. It wasn't the original Torah. In the Kabbalistic structure, the Cohen corresponds to the Sephirah of Chesed, expansive mercy, unrestricted flow. That's why the priestly blessing in Numbers 6:23 isn't a prayer. It's transmission. The Cohen doesn't ask. He channels. And now you understand something deeper. If the Cohen is a conduit between dimensions, then any alteration in his function alters the spiritual architecture of the world. That's why the change in the priesthood after the golden calf wasn't administrative. It was cosmic. Because when the channel changes, the flow changes. And if the flow changes, history changes. There are stories we think we know, until we understand what was truly at stake. Cain and Abel, two brothers, a field, a makeshift altar, a murder. That's what we remember. But if we read carefully, we discover something unsettling. This isn't the first crime in human history. It's the first priestly conflict. The text of Genesis 4 verses 3 to 5 states, "And it came to pass at the end of time, that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering to Hashem. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock, and of their fat portions." Let's pause. Both present a mincha. And mincha is not a symbolic little gift. It is a technical term that later appears in Leviticus 2 verse 1 to describe the formal priestly offering. Mincha, like the mincha prayer, is the evening offering before nightfall. And I repeat, all of this occurs before the 10 Commandments at Sinai. This means something radical. The system of offerings already existed before Sinai, before Aaron, before the tribe of Levi. There was no temple, no bronze altar, no nation, but there was a priesthood. So the inevitable question is, who was the priest? The answer is so simple that we overlook it. The firstborn. Cain was the firstborn. Genesis 4 verse 1 records Eve saying, "I have acquired a man with the Lord." His name, Cain, comes from Cana, to acquire, to possess. He is the first, the natural heir, the priest by design. Later, in Exodus 13 verse 2, God declares, "Consecrate to me every firstborn." He is not creating something new. He is acknowledging an ancient principle. The firstborn belongs to God because it represents what comes first. This is what is known as the pity on Haben. But here something puzzling happens. Abel also officiates. And Abel was not the firstborn. Why? The key lies in the details. The Torah says that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground. It doesn't specify quality. It doesn't mention first fruits. He simply brought something. But Abel brought from the firstborn of his flock. The word beshoret is decisive. The first, the best, that which inaugurates the cycle. The priest represents God's absolute priority. Cain offered. Abel prioritized. And then the divine verdict occurs. The text says that God looked with favor on Abel. The word is shah. It means to look with approval, to accept. God accepts Abel as a channel and rejects Cain. This is the first priestly transfer in history. Here is born a principle that will run throughout the Torah. Birth bestows potential. But faithfulness in your life is what activates the priesthood. That is, you can be born with many promises and inheritances, but you have to know how to activate them. Ishmael is the firstborn, but Isaac inherits. Esau is the firstborn, but Jacob receives the primacy. Reuben is the firstborn, but he loses his position. Finally, Levi receives the priesthood after the golden calf. Let the reader understand. The Torah is giving us all a message here. It's not about race. It's not about birthright. It's about faith and conviction. The pattern begins here, in the field of two brothers. And there's more. The name Hevel, Abel, means breath, vapor, something that rises. The sacrifice produces smoke that rises to heaven. Abel is literally the man who ascends. His name defines his role. In many translations, hevel is translated as vanity, and that translation is partly correct, but a better translation is simply vapor, something that rises like incense. After him, we see Noah offering sacrifices in Genesis 8, verse 20. Abraham erects altars in Genesis 12, verse 7. Isaac and Jacob do the same. They all act as family priests. The priesthood is domestic, not tribal. In fact, every man must act as the priest of his home and family, and every firstborn son must be offered to God as a son who will dedicate himself to the things of Hashem in your home when the father is absent. Before the golden calf, the design was clear. Every firstborn was the priest of his household. Every firstborn is mine, declares God. But after the sin of the calf, in Numbers 3:12, God says, I have taken the Levites instead of every firstborn. The original design of the first Torah was that the firstborn of each family would be a priest, an entire humanity structured around the awareness of firstness. And it was a more just system because every family, even those of nations, had the same benefits and obligations as all others. According to Kabbalah, that design was not abolished. It was postponed. There are biblical figures who appear for only a few verses, yet they uphold entire structures of spiritual history. Melchizedek is one of them. 3 verses in Genesis. Nothing more. And yet, if we understand who he is, we realize that the priesthood did not begin at Sinai, did not begin with Aaron, did not begin with the tribe of Levi, as I have already been explaining to you. And this is very important for you to understand what really happened at Sinai. The priesthood began much earlier. Genesis 14 verses 18 to 20 declares, And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine, and he was priest of the Most High God. Here, for the first time in the Torah, the word Cohen is explicitly applied to a specific individual. And this occurs approximately 4 centuries before the birth of Levi, son of Israel. This is a devastating fact for any theory that places the origin of the priesthood in the Levitical system. The Levitical priesthood is not the beginning. It is the late formalization of something much older, and it is the result of sin. Do not forget this, because it is also key to understanding many things. Now let us analyze his name. Melchizedek. It is composed of my king, derived from Melech, king, and Tzedek, justice, righteousness, divine order. His name means my king is justice or king of righteousness. It is not a decorative name. It is an ontological definition. It represents authority based on divine justice. And the text tells us something even more extraordinary. He is simultaneously king of Salem and priest of the Most High God. That means he possesses both priestly authority and monarchical authority, because according to the commentators, Salem is ancient Jerusalem. In the later system, these functions are separated. The king comes from Judah. The priest comes from Levi. Political power and spiritual power are divided, but here they are united. This reveals the original state of humanity before fragmentation. The priest and the king were one single reality, spiritual authority and earthly authority integrated. Melchizedek is king of Salem. Shalem means peace, wholeness, completeness. It is the original name of Jerusalem, the point where heaven and earth meet. He rules from the spiritual center of the world, and his title is universal. Cohen Leel Elyon, priest of the Most High God. It is not tribal. It is not ethnic. It is not Levitical. It represents the universal priesthood of humanity. Let us also observe what he offers. Bread and wine. Bread, physical sustenance, what emerges from the earth. Wine, transformation, joy, spiritual dimension. The priest unites both worlds, matter and spirit, earth and heaven, the temporal and the eternal. And then a decisive gesture occurs. The text says, and Abraham gave him 1/10 of everything. The tithe is given to the legitimate priest. Abraham recognizes in Melchizedek a superior spiritual authority. At that historical moment, he is the high priest of humanity. Another very important fact is that Abraham gave tithes to Melchizedek before his circumcision and centuries before the establishment of the law of Moses. This encounter occurs in Genesis 14, after the rescue of Lot, while circumcision is established in Genesis 17, when Abraham entered the covenant of circumcision as the first convert of the Bible. Now, on the other hand, rabbinic tradition in the Talmud, Nedarim 32b, identifies Melchizedek with Shem, son of Noah. If this is so, the priesthood not only precedes Levi, it goes back to creation itself. One of the theories that I myself defend: Adam, Seth, Noah, Shem, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the firstborn, and only afterward, Levi. The priesthood is not born at Sinai. At Sinai, it is divided because the sin of the golden calf brought division, problems, and spiritual servitude. Melchizedek represents the priesthood in its pure state, before the golden calf, before tribal restriction, before the fragmentation of spiritual authority. That is why Psalm 110 verse 4 declares, "You are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek." It does not say, according to the order of Aaron, because the model of Melchizedek is earlier and broader. It is the original design. In Kabbalistic terms, Tzedek represents the perfect balance between judgment and mercy. Melchizedek embodies that balance, an open channel without interruption, without concealment, without restriction. The Levitical priesthood emerges as a historical response to a spiritual crisis, the golden calf. It is a necessary adaptation. But Melchizedek represents the original plane, the human being as both king and priest. And I bring you another proof. According to Exodus 19 verse 6, God promised the nation of Israel that they would be for him a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. It literally says kingdom of priests. Obviously, this was before the sin of the golden calf, and we see how kingship and priesthood go hand in hand. Kingdom of priests, which is the same as saying priest kings. But we know this was not fulfilled afterward. Melchizedek is not a secondary figure, and proof of this is the number of books and commentaries written about him within Judaism itself. Melchizedek is the bridge between origin and destiny. And perhaps the question is not who he was. The question is whether we are prepared to return to that model, but when. So, I hope I've now answered the first question we posed in this class. What was the priesthood like before Sinai? It was based on the firstborn. It was familial. It was universal. It wasn't limited to a tribe or confined to an institutional system. From Adam to Noah, from Noah to Abraham, from Abraham to the sons of Jacob, the firstborn served as the natural priest of his household. Cain lost it due to a lack of spiritual priority. Abel assumed it out of faithfulness. Melchizedek embodied it as both king and priest. It was an open, direct model without fragmentation. The priesthood wasn't bureaucracy. It was an existential responsibility. And every family had the opportunity to have priests in their home through their firstborn son. It was a fairer, more universal system. But then came Sinai, and later, the golden calf. And here begins the second big question. What happened to the priesthood afterward? The priesthood ceased to be a universal birthright and became a restricted tribal function. We moved from the familial to the institutional, from the universal to the selective, from the direct to the mediated. And understanding this transformation is to understand why the spiritual history of Israel and of humanity took an irreversible turn with consequences that continue to this day. Now we will enter the world of Sinai. And here we must be extremely precise from the outset. We are not talking about two distinct Torahs. There is no literal plan A and a literal plan B. The essential content does not change. What changes is the mode of revelation. The Torah itself establishes the difference. Regarding the first tablets, it says, "The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God." Exodus 32 verse 16. Divine stone, divine writing, a completely heavenly initiative. Human beings only received. That is to say, it was the direct, revealed, simple word of God. But after the breaking of the Torah, God tells Moses, "Cut for yourself 2 tablets of stone." Exodus 34 verse 1. Now there is human participation. Moses prepares the stone, and God dictates to Moses, but they are not written by God. There is no miracle. There is mediation. What does this mean? That the second revelation introduces effort, interpretation, process. It is no longer absolute light descending unfiltered. It is light that requires carving, work, searching, study, interpretation, commentary, oral laws, unwritten traditions, and customs. The Torah itself hasn't changed. Our way of receiving it has changed. And in that
change, the Torah we study today is born, profound, codified, waiting to be revealed by those willing to carve the stone. And let me tell you now, the stone is your body.
Let us imagine for a moment Sinai before the fracturing. Not the Sinai of fear, not the Sinai of the golden calf, but the pure instant when heaven and earth had not yet separated again. The Torah describes this first state with words that are not ornamental poetry. They are pure ontology. And he gave Moses the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone, written with the finger of God. Exodus 31, verse 18. And then it insists, the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God. Exodus 32, verse 16. Divine work, divine writing. In rabbinic thought, this implies something radical, not only the celestial origin of the text, but a level of internalization and absolute clarity. It was not revealed information. It was ingrained consciousness. The word used to describe the writing is charat, engraved. But the sages in the Talmud, in Eruvin 54a, make a play on words that isn't a play, it's a revelation. Don't read charat, engraved, but charat, freedom. In Hebrew, these words are written the same, because vowels are not written in Hebrew. The first Torah wasn't simply law. It was spiritual freedom because it was a Torah for a nation that had faith in God. Hashem was their only God. Freedom from disordered impulses. Freedom from spiritual forgetfulness. Freedom even from death understood as disconnection. It was a Torah that wasn't just learned. It was embodied. And of course, all of this was miraculous. We truly can't even imagine this Torah today, much less explain it. But that's how it was. And here comes a breathtaking point. The same Talmudic passage states, if the first tablets hadn't been broken, the Torah wouldn't have forgotten Israel. Imagine that. A perfect memory, not academic, existential. The Torah engraved on their very being, not on parchment, not in libraries, in the inner structure of the collective soul. The Torah engraved on the very heart of the people, as the prophets would later say, a Torah engraved on the heart. This is the famous New Covenant, Jeremiah 31 verse 33, which prophesies that God will place his law in the minds and write it on the hearts of the people. Which Torah is Jeremiah speaking of here? The first Torah. The first state of Sinai was a people living in permanent clarity, without the constant struggle against spiritual amnesia. And this was not a private fantasy of Moses. Before the golden calf, God declares to the entire nation, "You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Exodus 19 verse 6. An entire priestly kingdom. Not an elite, not an exclusive tribe, not a religious caste. All of Israel destined to live in a prophetic state, in collective priestly consciousness. That was the horizon. The first Torah was open, transparent, complete. It needed no layers of concealment because the vessel was prepared to receive it without distortion. That is to say, the first Torah had no problems of interpretation. Even a child could interpret it because it was revealed, not hidden, simple, not codified. And the only requirement of this Torah was belief in God. In the one God, it was faith. But that state did not disappear entirely. It was interrupted. And classical Judaism places its restoration on the messianic horizon. Jeremiah 31 verse 33 expresses it with a promise that seems to echo the first Sinai. I will put my Torah within them, and I will write it on their hearts. Notice the symmetry. First, written by God on divine stone. In the end, written by God on the human heart. It is not another Torah. It is the same Torah fully internalized. The original ideal was not an external code that compels. It was an inner truth that liberates. It was not just obedience. It was transformation. The first Torah represented a world where revelation didn't need complex interpretation because human consciousness was aligned with it through faith. A world where learning and being were one and the same. And perhaps the question that remains is this: are we studying the Torah, or are we allowing it to be inscribed on us once again? Because history began with tablets of stone, and it will end, according to the prophetic promise, with hearts that no longer need to be broken. Now we arrive at the decisive moment, the breaking point. Up to this point, we have spoken of the ideal, total revelation, perfect memory, an entire kingdom of priests. But the Torah is not naive. The Torah is dramatic, and the drama begins in Exodus 32. The textual sequence is compelling. First, the sin of the golden calf. Exodus 32, verses 1 to 6. The people,
unable to tolerate Moses' apparent absence, create an image. They don't necessarily deny God, but they need something visible, something tangible, something manageable. Then Moses descends from the mountain, and the text says in Exodus 32 verse 19 that upon seeing the calf and the dancing, he threw down
the tablets from his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. The first tablets, God's work, God's writing, shattered. Then comes the intercession, Exodus 32 verse 30 onward. Moses ascends again. He begs, he pleads, he negotiates, if you will, and we will study a midrash on this later. And finally, in Exodus 34, the second ascent begins, the second covenant, the second set of tablets. The sequence is clear. Sin, rupture, intercession, new descent of revelation. But here we must ask an uncomfortable question. Did Moses act impulsively? Was it an emotional outburst? The Talmud answers with a surprising phrase. In Shabbat 87a, it is taught that God said to him, Yasher koad shishabarda, well done for breaking them. God validates the breaking according to this view. Breaking the tablets was not an act of uncontrolled anger. It was a spiritual necessity. In the rabbinic reading, if the tablets had been given intact to a people in a state of idolatry, the absolute revelation would have become absolute judgment. The total light, in that context, does not illuminate. It burns. The people could no longer sustain that level of clarity without fracturing completely. So Moses does something paradoxical. He breaks the revelation to save the people. He protects Israel from an exposure they were no longer prepared to receive. And here we understand the decline in level. The divine essence didn't change. Human capacity changed. The first Torah was open, luminous, direct. But after the golden calf, after idolatry, humanity needs a process. It needs mediation. It needs progressive concealment. You simply can't give a law of kings and priests to a people who are still enslaved in their minds. The breaking of the tablets symbolizes the rupture of the collective consciousness. From that moment on, revelation cannot be entirely direct. It must be adapted. It must be codified. It must descend in layers. The sin of the golden calf wasn't simply idolatry. It was an inability to sustain transcendence without visible intermediaries. And when consciousness falls, the form of the Torah changes, not because God changes, but because the vessel has cracked. And perhaps the deepest lesson is this: when we are not ready for the light, divine mercy sometimes consists of veiling it. Moses broke the tablets, but in doing so, he prevented the people from being broken forever. He gave them a second chance, but not of the same quality. After the rupture, nothing is ever the same again. It is not the revealing God who changes, nor does the message of the Torah change. What changes is the way revelation descends. God does not change, and the Torah does not change. What changes is revelation, the quality of revelation. The textual difference is subtle, but theologically explosive. Regarding the first tablets, the Torah says, the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God. Exodus 32, verse 16. Everything descended from above, stone and letters, matter and message, absolute divine initiative. It was a Torah written by God himself, without intermediary, without prophets, without redeemer, without Goel. It was a Torah written by God himself for a human being whom he himself had created and knows perfectly. I can tell you, therefore, that this Torah was perfect. But in the second tablets, God tells Moses, cut for yourself 2 tablets of stone. Exodus 34, verse 1. Pause there. Cut for yourself. Now there is human participation. God continues dictating, but he does not prepare the medium. Therefore, the entire weight of revelation rests according to the merits of Moses, according to his level of prophecy, according to his understanding and his capacities. But the support is prepared by man. The stone no longer falls from heaven. It is extracted, worked, and formed from below. That change introduces a new mode of Torah. It is no longer only direct light descending. It is light that requires construction, effort, interpretation, method, tradition. It is the birth of study as a spiritual path. The Midrash Shemet Rabbah 46:1 teaches that the first tablets contained only the 10 commandments, but that in the second tablets were also given halakot, midrash, and agat. It says so explicitly. You can verify this in the rabbinic texts. This is not an invention of the proto-Christians in the early centuries when they taught these things. That is to say, after the sin, revelation becomes multipolar. It is no longer only direct commandment. It now includes detailed law, interpretation, narrative, conceptual expansion. The domain of Torah Shebal Peh, the oral Torah, emerges with force. Why? Because when light can no longer be received in an absolute manner, it must unfold in layers. It requires explanation. The Torah begins to speak on multiple levels: Peshet, Remes, Darash, Sod. Literal meaning, allusion, interpretation, secret. Not because God wants to complicate our lives, but because the soul requires process to return to clarity, and because sin, which is idolatry, separates one from God. The problem was not God, it was the idolatry of the people. That is to say, according to this study, an idolater would not understand the Torah under any circumstance, even if he memorizes it, because he would only be learning dead letter, not living letter, which only faith gives.
The Midrash Tanshuma, in Ki Tisa 31, adds another decisive nuance. It teaches that the first tablets were given in a public, open, spectacular manner, and for that reason, they were broken. The second tablets, by contrast, were delivered in a more discreet, more intimate mode, with an element of tzniut, of reserve. That is to say, in the
Second Torah, intermediaries are established. For example, the sages who know the interpretation of the Torah, the oral Torah, and teach it to the people. After the golden calf, revelation enters a regime of discretion. It is not concealment as punishment, although it may appear so. But no, because the punishment, according to the text itself, would have been the destruction of the entire people and the raising of another nation from Moses himself. The second Torah was not punishment. It was a second opportunity, because God is exceedingly merciful. The second Torah is concealment as a strategy of repair. It is tikkun. That is why this second Torah has more commandments, more sacrifices, more festivals, more codes, more interpretive keys, more simonim, signs, or markers. I believe that, fundamentally, the second Torah is more complex because it is hidden and encoded. The light is now protected, administered, distributed within a system that demands maturity.
The Torah ceases to be only an explosive collective experience and becomes a continuous path of study. And here we understand something profound. The second Torah is not inferior in content. It is more complex in access. The message is the same, but its form is more demanding. It introduces human merit as part of the process. It introduces interpretive responsibility.
It introduces tradition as a bridge between generations. It introduces midah, rules of interpretation, and this complicates everything. The first Torah was a total gift. It was clarity without effort, because its only requirement was faith in God. In the second, the one we have today, clarity must be earned through merit. And perhaps, listen carefully, in that apparent fall, there is an unexpected greatness. Because now the human being does not only receive, he participates. He cuts the stone. He debates halakha. He explores midrash. He seeks the sod. Revelation no longer overwhelms. It invites. And thus, what began as rupture becomes a divine pedagogical model. The Torah conceals itself so that we may seek it. And in the search, we are transformed. Now we will enter the world of mysticism and Kabbalah because it is the best source for understanding all this about the first and second revelations of the Torah. There is an image that, if we understand it, completely changes our relationship with the Torah. The sages teach, the Torah was given with black fire upon white fire, Midrash Tanshuma, Bereshit 1. And the Jerusalem Talmud repeats, the Torah that the Holy One, blessed be He, gave to Israel, was written with black fire upon white fire. Yerushalmi Shekalim 6:1. What do you mean, black fire upon white fire? What is that? The Torah is not simply ink on parchment. It is not an ancient book. It is a metaphysical structure of light and form. The white fire represents infinite light, boundless divine consciousness, the absolute ground, the all-encompassing presence. The black fire represents the letters, the forms, the boundaries that allow the infinite to be comprehensible. Without white, black would have no support. Without black, white would be inaccessible. Revelation is the balance between the two. This means that even the blank spaces in the Torah are significant. Silence also speaks. Absence also reveals. The Torah is not only what is written, it is also what surrounds the writing. And here is the secret. Studying Torah is learning to read fire. Not just the words, but the light that sustains them. The Zohar explains that the Torah exists first as divine light before becoming letters. Zohar 2:84a states, "The Torah emerges from white fire and is engraved in black fire, and all is one." Here the Zohar establishes two levels, white fire and black fire. Both are the Torah, but they represent distinct levels of revelation. The white fire represents the infinite essence of the Torah. It is the divine light before it is limited by form. White represents that which is limitless. The Arizal explains, before the formation of the letters, everything was simple, unlimited light. In the book at time, Shar 1. This means that the original level of the Torah is pure light. No words, no language, direct consciousness. The black fire represents the letters, the forms, the limits, the codification. Black creates definition. Without black, there is no form. Without letters, there is no language.
The Zohar teaches, the letters are the vessels of the higher light. As written in Zohar I 15a, the letters are not the light itself. They are the vessels that contain the light. In Kabbalah, this is called, or light kli, vessel. The white fire is the light. The black fire is the vessel. Before the sin of the golden calf, the people had direct access to the
Inner level. The Zohar states regarding this, Israel saw and perceived the divine glory face to face. Zohar 2:94b. This means that the Torah was not just text, but after the golden calf, a contraction occurs. Access to the white fire is reduced, and the Torah begins to manifest itself primarily as black fire, as letters, as code. The Zohar then teaches, after Israel sinned, the upper light was hidden. Zohar 3:216a. This is absolutely central. The Torah does not change in essence, but the level of human access changes. Now, Kabbalah teaches that the letters are garments. The Zohar says, the Torah has a body, a garment, and a soul. This is written in Zohar 3:152a. This corresponds to garments, literal level; body, interpretive level; soul, secret level. The literal level is the black fire. The secret level is the white fire. For his part, the Arizal, in the 16th century, taught something radical. The entire Torah consists of the names of God. In the book Shar HaGilgilim, in the introduction, this means that the Torah is not simply narrative. It is an energetic structure. The letters are configurations of divine energy. The black fire organizes the flow of the white fire. For his part, the Kabbalist Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto explains, the Torah contains the secrets of the divine governance of the universe. Direct Hashem. But these secrets are hidden within the words. This is precisely the concept of black fire over white fire. The external form conceals the internal content. The first tablets represented more direct access to the white fire. That is why they were made entirely by God. Exodus 32 verse 16. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God. The second tablets introduce human participation. Exodus 34 verse 1. Cut for yourself 2 tablets. This introduces the element of mediation. Direct access decreases. Indirect access increases. The Zohar declared almost 2,000 years ago. In the future, the secrets of the Torah will be revealed. Zohar I 1:17a. And the prophet Jeremiah, I will put my Torah within them. Jeremiah 31 verse 33. This signifies a return to the original state, where the Torah will not be merely letters. It will be direct consciousness, as at Sinai before the golden calf. And the one in charge of this is none other than the Messiah, and we will speak of him in the next section. Now we come to point 3 of this lesson. How do we access the first Torah, the original one? Well, the main answer is obvious. Through the Torah we have, which is the second Torah. It's through this because there is no other. So, understanding this, there's a question that runs through our entire lesson like an undercurrent. If the Torah became more complex after the break, how do we access its deepest levels? Well, in this segment, I'm going to give you several versions of how to reach the original Torah, according to traditional Judaism, Kabbalah, and other traditions. Stay tuned because there will be many surprises. The most traditional and widely accepted answer is through parts. Parts is the official structural model of rabbinic and Kabbalistic Judaism for explaining how revelation works. The Hebrew word means garden, orchard, paradise. A cultivated space, not wild. A place where the natural and the cultivated meet. But in tradition, it's an acronym, Peshet, Remez, Jerash, and Sod, for levels of access, for simultaneous depths within a single text. The Talmud takes this with absolute seriousness. In Barakat 14b and Chagiga 14b, it teaches, for entered pards. Ben Azai died. Ben Zoma lost his mind. Elisha ben Avuya apostatized. Only Rabbi Akiva entered in peace and left in peace. This is not a fable. It is a warning. Accessing the deeper levels of the Torah transforms one's perception of reality, and not everyone is prepared. Let's begin with the first level. Peshet means simple, direct. It is the literal meaning of the text. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, describes the creation of the physical universe. Here, the Torah speaks on the historical, narrative, and basic legal plane. In Kabbalistic terms, it corresponds to the world of Asiya, the world of action. But the Torah never stops there. The second level is remez, indication, clue. The text suggests more than it explicitly states. For example, can be read as, He created six, alluding to the six emotional sphirot. Here, the text points to invisible structures. This level corresponds to the world of Yetzirah, formation. Next comes Jerash, investigation, extraction. This is the realm of Midrash and Talmud. Here, the sages interpret beyond the surface. The classic example is an eye for an eye in Exodus 21 verse 24. In Peshet, it seems literal. In Jerash, it means financial compensation. It doesn't contradict the text. It reveals its deeper meaning. This level corresponds to Bariah, the world of intellectual creation. And finally, Sod. Sod means secret, mystery, hidden level. Here, the Torah ceases to be merely history or law and becomes a cosmic map. The Zohar warns, woe to the man who says that the Torah is only stories, written in Zohar 3, 152a. In Sod, the Torah describes the structure of the Sphirot, the divine flow, the spiritual architecture of the universe. This level corresponds to Atzilut, the world of divine emanation. Now understand something essential. The Torah doesn't have four different meanings. It has four simultaneous depths. It's like an ocean. You can walk along the shore, swim meters from the beach, or you can dive in to see the underwater world. The pards is the method for descending in an orderly fashion and has been structured over 2 millennia. After the golden calf, when revelation could no longer be received as absolute, direct light, access became progressive. The pards is the map for regaining depth without being broken in the attempt. And the lesson is clear. It's not enough to read. You have to cultivate the garden, because the Torah is text, and it is code. It is history, and it is divine structure. It is universal and personal prophecy. Prophecy in your life, through the Ruach HaKodesh. And each level we access not only reveals more of the text, it reveals more of us. If the parts teaches us that the Torah has levels, then an inevitable question arises. How do we access the deepest level without getting lost in the attempt? Intellectual analysis is not enough. Mastering the Peshet, the Remez, or even the Jerash is not enough. The Sod, the inner dimension prior to concealment, demands more than just the mind. It demands awareness.
And here we enter a profoundly Jewish, though sometimes forgotten, realm, conscious internalization. In our tradition, this has technical names: Hagiga, Psycha, Hitbonenut. Hagiga means contemplative meditation on the Torah. It is not an imported practice. It is a biblical commandment. And you shall meditate on it day and night,
says Joshua 1 verse 8. The word is the Haggadah. The Torah is not only studied, it is pondered, it is internalized, it is breathed. Because to return to the original Torah, the one engraved in our being, it is not enough to read black fire. We must allow the white fire to illuminate from within. The central verse is clear and powerful, and you shall meditate on it day and night. Joshua 1 verse 8 The key word is vehagita. It comes from the root haga. And here we must be precise. Haga does not simply mean to read. It does not mean to skim a text. It means to meditate, to contemplate deeply, to repeat internally, to internalize until the idea becomes part of the fabric of consciousness. The Torah does not command us to constantly absorb information. It commands us to constantly transform. The same verb appears in Psalm 1 verse 2. But his delight is in the Torah of the Lord, and on his Torah he meditates day and night. Observe the spiritual model, delight and meditation. Not cold obligation, not mechanical study. Delight that leads to inner repetition. The root also means to emit a soft sound, to murmur. It is the whisper of the text that is repeated until it penetrates the heart. It is not just mental analysis. It is inner vibration. In the mystical tradition, repeating the Torah in a low voice is not a pedagogical technique. It is a method of aligning the soul. The Sefer Yetzirah teaches, when the heart understands, the soul is elevated. Understanding is not merely cognitive. It is integration. When the text ceases to be external and begins to resonate within, elevation occurs. And we have a concrete example in the Torah itself. In Genesis 24 verse 63 we read, "And Isaac went out into the field to meditate." The word is lazuich. Classical commentators, such as Rashi and Ramban Nachmanides, explain that it implies contemplative prayer and inner dialogue with the divine, not public discourse, not ritual sacrifice, open field, silence, interiority. The Zohar comments that Isaac united with the divine presence through this contemplation. Isaac is not the patriarch of expansive movement like Abraham. He is the patriarch of depth, of inner descent, of silent encounter. This reveals something fundamental to us. Meditation is not foreign to Judaism. It is not a cultural import. It is a biblical mandate and a patriarchal model.
Vehagita bo yomam valela. The Torah must become a constant awareness, not obsessive, but integrative, like the psalms, like the breath. After the golden calf, when revelation could no longer be fully revealed, the recovery of the inner level depends on this silent work. The first Torah was engraved on divine stone. The ultimate goal is
For it to be engraved on the heart. And the bridge between stone and heart is called meditation, not to escape the world, but to look at the world again with the inner light alight. Now we enter an even more delicate dimension. The Arizal, Rabbi Itzhak Luria, taught that meditation on the Torah is not a psychological exercise. It is a spiritual mechanism. In his work at Time, he explains that human thought is not an isolated phenomenon within the skull. It is an energy that can align itself with the higher levels of spiritual reality. When the mind focuses completely on the divine structure, on the sphirot, on the sacred names, on the spiritual configurations, the soul synchronizes with the light that sustains the universe. It is not imagination. It is alignment. For the Arizal, human consciousness is capable of ascending through the spiritual worlds when it is properly ordered. And the primary instrument for that ascent is deep concentration on the Torah. Here another fundamental term appears, hitbonenut. It means profound contemplation.
It comes from bina, meaning understanding, but not superficial understanding. Bina is the capacity to penetrate an idea and unfold its inner implications. It is the intelligence that breaks down, analyzes, integrates, and gives form. The Zohar formulates it clearly. Through Bina, secrets are revealed. This is written in Zohar 2,
161b. And how is the Sephira Bina activated? Not only by reading, by contemplating. Hitbonenut is pausing, taking a verse, a word, a letter, and allowing the mind to explore it until it ceases to be information and becomes an inner experience. And here we understand why meditation allows access to the original Torah. The first Torah was not just external text. It was direct consciousness. It was a revelation that penetrated the being without resistance. After the golden calf, access became indirect. The light clothed itself in letters, in stories, in laws, in Talmudic arguments. It did not disappear. It clothed itself. Meditation pierces through that clothing. It does not eliminate the letters. It passes through them. The Zohar declares, the words of the Torah are doors, Zohar I, 82a. A door is not the room. It is the access. If we only admire the door, we remain outside. If we learn to cross it, we enter the inner dimension. That is what the arisal teaches. When the mind focuses purely on the divine structure, the soul aligns with the light contained in those words. Thought becomes a vehicle. Contemplation ascends. And then we understand something extraordinary. The second Torah, the hidden Torah, is not a definitive barrier. It is an invitation to spiritual maturity. The light no longer falls effortlessly, but it remains available to those who learn to focus their minds, to order their inner selves, to contemplate deeply. And here I bring you a controversial text, and I know that some of our viewers don't like these topics of Judeo-Christianity, but here we study without taboos, with academic honesty, and by holistically acknowledging all the texts and traditions that come to us from Second Temple Judaism in order to see a more complete picture of the sacred scriptures. In the second epistle to the Corinthians 12:2, the mystical experience of the Apostle Paul, better known as Saul of Tarsus in his historical context, is recounted. He mentions having been caught up to the third heaven 14 years earlier. He describes this vision in the third person, emphasizing his uncertainty as to whether it was a physical or spiritual experience, underscoring humility and divine power over his own boasting. The text says, "I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or whether out of the body I do not know, God knows, was caught up to the third heaven." For many interpreters, this is an allusion to the Pauline epistles of Kabbalistic meditations that take you to spiritual places. Whether in the body, I don't know. Whether outside the body, I don't know either. Now we must take a deeper step. If the Torah was hidden behind the golden calf, if access became gradual, if we need study, contemplation, and inner work, then an inevitable question arises. Is there anyone capable of piercing that veil more clearly? Tradition answers with a precise word, the tzaddik, the righteous one. The root, tzaddik, means justice, righteousness, alignment with the divine order. But in the Kabbalistic structure, the tzaddik is not simply a good person. He is a functional spiritual structure. He is a conduit. The verse in Proverbs 10 verse 25 declares, that tzaddik is the foundation of the world. Yesed, foundation. In Kabbalah, Yesed is the sapphira that transmits divine light to the physical plane. It does not generate the light. He channels it. The Zohar explains it without metaphors. This is Yesed. This is the tzaddik who sustains the world. Zohar I, 59b. This means that the tzaddik keeps open the spiritual flow that sustains creation. The Zohar adds, the tzaddik is the central pillar upon which the world stands. Zohar 2, 164b. He is the axis between or Ein Sof, the infinite light, and concrete reality. And here we understand something crucial. This includes the inner light of the Torah. Moses is an example. And Moses ascended to God. Exodus 19 verse 3. The Zohar states, Moses attained what no other man attained. Zohar 2, 93b. Even after the golden calf, when revelation became less profound for the people, Moses accessed depths that others could not grasp. Why? Through his merits, because he did not sin and did good works for his neighbor. The tzaddik can see where others only read. The Zohar declares, blessed are the tzaddikim who know the secrets of the Torah. Zohar 3, 13a. And also, the Holy One, blessed be He, reveals the secrets of the Torah to the tzaddikim. Zohar 3, 23a. Observe the order. First, spiritual alignment. Then, revelation. It is not just a matter of intelligence. It is a matter of inner purity, of coherence between life and Torah. The arisal teaches in Etz Haim that elevated souls can ascend to spiritual levels hidden since the beginning of creation. The tzaddik, through his refinement, can access layers of light that remain closed to ordinary consciousness. And the Zohar speaks of something even bolder. The light was hidden for the tzaddikim, Zohar I, 31b. That light is, or Haganas, the primordial light of creation, associated with the clarity prior to all concealment. The same light that symbolizes the Torah at its purest level. The Talmud expresses it strikingly. The entire world is sustained by the merit of Hanina, my son, as stated in Barakat 17b. The merit of the tzaddik is not private. It is structural. It sustains the collective spiritual flow. The Ramkol, in Direct Hashem, explains that the tzaddikim actively participate in the rectification of the world. They do not merely save themselves. They restore balance to creation. And the Zohar declares something that seems like an exaggeration, but it isn't. The tzaddik is the Torah, written in Zohar 3:71b. It doesn't mean that he is a human book. It means that the Torah lives in him, that the word is no longer just on parchment, but embodied in his being. And now everything is connected. The first Torah was direct consciousness. After the rupture, the revelation clothed itself in letters, systems, and methods. But the tzaddik represents the point where the Torah becomes life again, where the inner light manifests itself once more in human form. That is why the Zohar concludes, "Blessed are the tzaddikim in this world and in the world to come," Zohar I, 8a. Because the tzaddik not only studies the Torah, he lives it. Walk in his light.
And through his merit, access to the original Torah, the one inscribed on the conscience, is reopened, even if only for a moment, for the entire generation. And here is a striking revelation. The tzaddik serves or helps more after life than during it. We already revealed this to you in the last section of this documentary video.
If we have followed the thread with intellectual honesty, we arrive at an inevitable conclusion. The history of the Torah is not linear. It is a movement of revelation, rupture, concealment, and promise of restoration. And that restoration has a name, Messiah. The word Messiah comes from the root mashich, which means to anoint, consecrate, or activate for a divine function. He is not simply the chosen one in a political sense. He is the one activated to restore spiritual order. And according to classical Jewish tradition, Tanakh, Talmud, Midrash, and Zohar, his central function is not to conquer territories. It is to restore the original level of revelation. Listen to the prophecy of Jeremiah 31 verse 33. "I will put my Torah within them, and I will write it on their hearts." This does not describe a new religious constitution. It describes a change of medium. At Sinai, the Torah was written on stone. In the Messianic era, it will be written on the heart. It is a return to the original model, inner revelation, not just external commandment. Isaiah amplifies this with an oceanic image. The earth will be filled with the knowledge of YHWH as the waters cover the sea. Isaiah 11 verse 9. The earth will be filled with the knowledge of YHWH as the waters cover the sea. The key word is deat. Deat is not academic information. It is direct, experiential knowledge. It is the level that was implicit in the first revelation before the break. The Midrash Tehillim says, "A new Torah will come forth from me." But the sages clarify, it is not a different Torah in essence. It is new in its revelation. Rabbeinu Bayah explains that it is about the secrets that were already there, now unveiled. The Zohar is even more explicit. In the future, the secrets of the Torah will be revealed, Zohar I, 1:17a. King Messiah will teach the Torah to the whole world, Zohar 3, 153b. It is not about abolition. It is about revealed depth. The Zohar connects this age with the Or Haganas, the primordial light. The light that was hidden will be revealed in the world to come, Zohar I, 31b. The same light associated with creation, the same light that symbolizes the Torah at its purest level. Maimonides, in Mishnah Torah, Hilchot Malachim 12:5, describes that time without famine or war, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of God. It is not magic. It is a transformation of collective consciousness. The Arizal teaches that the Messiah will reveal the highest level of Sod, associated with Keter, the highest dimension of the divine structure. It is the point closest to the original source of revelation. And the Zohar formulates a phrase that connects our entire journey. Moses is the first redeemer and will be the last redeemer, Zohar I, 253a. Moses began the process by bringing the Torah into the world. The Messiah will complete it by revealing its full depth. And then we understand the ultimate horizon. Jeremiah 31 verse 34 declares, "No longer will each one teach his neighbor, for they will all know me." This doesn't mean that study will disappear. It means that knowledge will be direct, internal, natural. The Messiah doesn't change the Torah. The Messiah removes the concealment. He restores access to the light that was present before the fracture. He returns the possibility of a humanity living with the Torah not just in hand, but in consciousness. That is the return to the original Torah. And perhaps the question that remains is not when he will come, but whether we are preparing to live in a world where the truth will no longer be hidden, but fully revealed within us. Now, at the end of this class, we enter delicate territory, and we must walk with rigor and respect, but also by examining biblical studies from a Hebrew, academic, and intellectually honest perspective with the texts themselves. And we are going to study texts from proto-Christianism, that is, texts of the New Testament, as it is historically known, because this is not about caricaturing Paul, nor about reading him through polemical lenses. It is about carefully distinguishing three levels: what he actually wrote, how it was interpreted afterward, and how those texts can be compared with the Jewish structure of direct revelation and mediated revelation after the rupture. Let us begin with the core. In 2 Corinthians 3 verse 6, Paul writes, "Not of the letter, but of the Spirit, for the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life." The Greek words are key: gramma, letter, pneuma, spirit. He does not say that the Torah is bad, or old, or abolished. He does not say that revelation is an error. What he establishes is a distinction between external mode and internal mode. As we study today, Kabbalah expresses this with the concept of black fire and white fire. And then, in the same chapter, he makes something even more explicit. In 2 Corinthians 3 verse 3 he affirms, "Not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of human hearts." Here the reference is unequivocal. Tablets of stone refers to Exodus 31 verse 18. Paul is thinking about Sinai, and the contrast he constructs is not against revelation, but against the mode of reception. Stone, heart. This is not a Pauline invention. It is Jeremiah 31 verse 33. "I will put my Torah within them, and I will write it on their heart." Paul is working within a Jewish prophetic framework. His language is not anti-Torah. It is eschatological. Now, in 2 Corinthians 3 verse 7, he describes the tablets as a ministry of death engraved in letters on stone. That sounds strong, but we must understand it in the context of Romans 7 verse 7. "I would not have known sin except through the law." The Torah, in its external form, especially for Gentiles who do not know the Torah because they were not educated in Judaism, exposes what is right and what is sin. This is surprisingly close to a rabbinic reading. After the golden calf, the Torah in external mode also functions as judgment, as confrontation with the human fracture. In the Epistle Galatians 3 verse 19, he is even more forceful. Why then the law? It was added because of transgressions. Here Paul seems to affirm that the law enters the scene as a response to sin. And if we remember the structure of our class, after the golden calf, revelation changes mode. It becomes institutionalized. It becomes codified. It adapts to a humanity that can no longer sustain direct light. Paul here may be speaking of the priestly law, that of the temple, because in the first Torah there were no sacrifices, nor Levites, nor priests in the temple. As we already studied, the priests were the firstborn. In the Epistle Romans 8 verse 2, he distinguishes between the law of the Spirit of life and the law of sin and death. Again, two modes of experience. Romans 2 verse 15 speaks of the law written in their hearts. Galatians 4 verse 24 mentions two covenants. Philippians 3 verse 9 distinguishes external righteousness of the law and internal righteousness. The pattern is consistent. Paul operates with a duality that we studied in this class: letter, spirit stone, heart external, internal code. Life now, we must be intellectually honest. In Judaism, and Paul, or Saul of Tarsus, was a Jew deeply knowledgeable in the oral Torah and the Judaism of his time, of the Second Temple. The distinction is not the abolition of the external Torah. It is progressive integration toward interiorization. In Paul, the tension is resolved in a more radical way within his theological framework, always remembering that he is also teaching Torah to Gentiles, something revolutionary in his time, and sarcastically, even today. But structurally, the question is similar. Can revelation remain only in the letter, or must it become consciousness? From the Jewish perspective we have developed, the first tablets represent direct revelation. The second tablets represent mediated Torah adapted after the fall. The Messianic horizon promises a return to the Torah written in the heart. Paul, reading Jeremiah, also speaks of Torah written in the heart.
The difference lies in how the historical process and the permanent function of the law are understood, but the conceptual axis, letter versus interiorization, is not foreign to Jewish thought. And here we must conclude with clarity. Paul does not speak of two different Torahs in content. He speaks of two modes of relationship with revelation, and that distinction, when analyzed with textual rigor, is not so distant from the biblical and rabbinic structure that distinguishes between stone and heart, between external form and inner light. The final question is not polemical, it is existential. Do we live the Torah as an external code or as an internal reality? Because the tension between letter and spirit is not an ancient debate. It is a daily experience, and each generation must decide how to cross that threshold.
This concludes today's class. Thank you very much for your time and trust in Mishnah TV. I invite you to visit our website, lemishnah.com, where you will find more material and articles on all these topics. And I invite you to watch the next video. Shalom, shalom.